What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and today I am back with another of my year-end reviews. And today it's PFL that I am looking at. I've already done a review for PFL Europe. If you haven't checked that out, please do on our YouTube channel or on the Sherdog.com website. But today I'm going to be concentrating on the PFL 2023 regular season and the PFL in general, I suppose. With the PFL, I usually start these shows off by looking back at the year, going through a couple of the cards, and then looking forward. And I will go through the cards and talk about some of the fights and who my fighter of the year is as well. But with the PFL, it's almost impossible to talk about the past without talking about the future, because so much has changed for PFL, I suppose, in the last year. And I would describe the PFL, if I was to look back. So I look back at the year for Bellator, and it was very good inside the cage. Obviously, maybe not so good outside of the cage, but they have a life and they're going forward. I look back at the UFC and I didn't really like that year. I think Cage Warriors had a good year. I think other places had a good year. For the PFL, it's a little bit different. I think the PFL outside of the cage had one of the best years any MMA organization could ever ask for. You know, they bought Bellator. They've taken themselves to the new level. What we're looking forward to next year is uncompromising and brilliant and fantastic. I think they've had some really good PR. They've, put on some good fights as well. But also the amount of care that people have from people care now about PFL. And I'll tell you, as someone who's been covering PFL for a long time, I don't think that was always the case. It took me time to warm to the PFL season format and all of that, but once I did a couple of years ago, I've really enjoyed it since. And I think people, when they're explained it, they actually that makes kind of sense and that's good. And the things that they don't like about MMA, I suppose, are not there in the PFL. They pay well. There's a big £1 million at the end. There's a meritocracy. You don't have to be, Dana White's best friend to get a title shot or anything like that. And it's all well and good. So I do think it's been a great year for telling people that. They've gotten obviously the big Saudi money as well, where we can say whether that's good or bad, but for their business and all that, it's undoubtedly good. Francis Ngannou, massive for them, and especially going forward as well. As I said, very hard to look back at PFL without looking forward. They have Jake Paul, who might fight in MMA, and that's going to be a big attraction, even if it only lasts for one fight or whatever. But it was fantastic. A slightly negative point, then inside the cage, I think it was probably the lowest year for PFL in a good while, and there's one reason for that. It's because so many people fail drugs tests. And I feel like if you ask Don Davis or Ray Seff or whoever it be, if they could have restarted the season when that happened, I think it was after fight week 1. I think they probably would have if they could. Now, you couldn't because of contractual obligations to the fighters and to the I'm sure ESPN and worldwide broadcasters and all of that. That's not possible, but it was a really, really, really tough thing for them to deal with. And honestly, I think I was going to say before the finale that the season never recovered from it. I think the finale saved it somewhat, but it was very unfortunate for PFL, where they'd want to blow away a year, and I don't think they necessarily had a blow away a year, but it's actually very little to actually do with PFL. It reminded you a little bit of Bellator from a couple of years ago, where they put on so many good fights, and the fights just didn't deliver. Now, the fights delivered in PFL this year. There were some very good fights and very good performances, but just when there was I'll name the guys here who failed drug tests, because that tells you, I think, a lot about the quality the PFL lost. So they lost Thiago Santos, who would have been one of the favourites to win light heavyweight. They lost Bruno Capelloza because he failed the drug test, who was the favourite and would have been the favourite again, I think, to win that heavyweight. Flores, Jotko as well, known names. Kuniev, who was a very good heavyweight. Mohamed Fakhreddin, Cesar Ferreira, Will Flory, and Daniel Torres as well. So to lose all of those names, it was very, very, very tough. And they got back. They got some good fighters in, but just I think Santos, Capoloza, especially those two, even you could say Cesar Ferreira, very tough. Like Will Fleury as well, like they came back to Ireland, even let's say if he didn't win the tournament, if they had him to fight in Ireland, it would have been a big plus for them as well. So I think that was the biggest minus point for PFL this year. But if you know, luckily for them, it almost feels like all the news around PFL, all the goodwill and all, people have kind of forgotten about that, you know. And PFL, they dealt with it in a very professional manner, I thought. You know, they want to bring in USADA, which, you know, I don't know if that's a good thing necessarily, but maybe a lot of people would say it was. And, you know, they suspended all the people that didn't try it. There was no trying to hide it or anything like that. They got suspended. That was it, and they were gone. But that's so tough. Like if you're a PFL and you only have, you know, obviously the certain amount of seasonal tournaments every year, it is very tough when you lose like a large percentage of the fighters out of those tournaments. So very, very tough. And look, as I said, it was tough to bounce back, but by the time they got to the final, which we'll talk about here in a second, they did it. So let's talk about it. Let's get to the PFL season, and let's discuss the way it went. I suppose when everything, you know, when everything, I suppose, the rust met the road, as they say, there was a bracket and a season with fighters that I suppose some people wouldn't know, you know, down the ledger maybe, but the ones at the top were still pretty good. And, you know, they had that, and that I suppose that is a good thing. Just to go through maybe some of the season roster for 2023, and then we'll get to the cards. In the featherweight division, we had Flores, Lochnan, Jenkins, Wade, Torres, Braga, Pineda, Josum Bin, Moraes, Kababulov, Kudo, and Diamond. And obviously, you know, we know what happened with the drug test failure. Some were in and some were out. Ante Delia then at heavyweight, the heavyweights, Antelia Capoloza, Cesar Ferreira, Danilo Marquez, Golsov, Heiderman, Nunes, Sheffield, Ferreira, Brady, Adrisak, Green, Kuniev, and De Castro at light heavyweight then. Andrew Sanchez, Daniel Spond, and Monte in Sanganai, Joshua Silveira, Christoph Jocko, Martin Hamlet, Mohamed Fakhreddin, Rob Wilkinson, Sam Kay, Taylor Johnson, Thiago Santos, Will Flores, and Tim Karen. And then at lightweight, Amid Amir, Martinez, Romero, Miranda, Manfeo, Obamercia, Schult, Collard, Burgos, Ray, Nishikawa. At featherweight, welterweight then, they have been Egley, Carlos Leal, David Zavada, Danilo Taylor, Magomed Kerimov, Al Salawi, Umalatov, Lopez, Renfro, Mitchell, C. And in the women's featherweight division, finally, Amanda Leibrook, Aspinlad, Evelyn Martins, Julia Budd, Makathena, Pacheco, Kale Harrison obviously wasn't in the tournament this season. Sobek, Jindrova, Olenek, and Yoga Hisaki. And, you know, one guy I failed to mention there was obviously Rob Wilkinson, you know, who didn't end up coming towards the finale after such a good win as well last year. So a lot of people fall out. A lot of those names which I mentioned there just didn't end up going the whole way. And that was tough on him. But still, let's get to some of the fights and go through some of the cards and reminisce on how the season went for PFL. So it all started off back in April. I think that's interesting as well for PFL, and I like the fact that in the upcoming year, I think they said February they're coming back with the PFL versus Bellator card. This is a common theme for me across all of these promotions, that like they're starting too late in the year. Like, okay, I understand it's hard to sell tickets in January and February and all that, and people don't want to go out and they want to stay in after spending money over the Christmas time. But like, surely at the start of February, at the end of January, if one or two of the promotions capitalize on it and put on a couple of cards, I know the UFC do it, but I feel like there must be some sort of market there, considering no one else does it. You know, a lot of people don't sell tickets. Boxing doesn't do it much, and the other MMA organizations don't do it much. Like, if you're an organization here, let's say you say, right, I'm going to have 2 events in January. I'm going to have one in the 2nd week of January and the 4th week of January. It's going to be tough, but you might have a better chance. Do you know what you also have a better chance of? even if it's let's say it's an Apex type show or a warehouse show or whatever it might be, you don't even try to sell tickets. If you can get on TV, there aren't many nights there's no UFC on. There aren't many nights there's no Bellator, PFL, Cage Warriors and all of that. You can get the audience to watch you. And I think Risen and Octagon at the end of the year had that. And I think PFL would be very wise to do that. But I digress on that. They started off in April with, a big name fight, I suppose, Brendan Loughnane against Marlon Moraes. It happened, I suppose, as you would think it happened. Brendan Loughnane took Marlon Moraes apart, looked absolutely fantastic in that after coming in as champion. And then the spate of no contests occurred. Wilkinson Santos, Jocko Fleury, Flores against Torres. But the other fights on it, you know what's funny here? The very bottom fight, let's mention that one first, was probably the most important fight on this card, because Impa Kasanganay beat Corey Hendricks, and what an important fight that turned out to be. You'd win here for the likes of Ty Flores and Dylan Monte. And what about this fight as well? Gabriel Braga and Jesus Pinedo, which is a fight we'll be seeing again later in the year. Gabriel Braga won this one in April. But the light heavyweights then, Joshua Silveira got a win over Sam Kay, and Hamlet got a win. Good fights there. Good setup fights, I feel like, for both of those lads. Khabibulov came in against Kudo, got a win, and Bubba Jenkins as well won in that one. The second fight was a week later, and the women's featherweights were in it. Now, we had a change this year as well. Last year it was the women's 155-pound division. Now it's 145-pound, obviously, because Kayla Harrison wasn't in it. I think the big issue here was that Kayla Harrison wasn't in it. Look, and you didn't have the draw of Kayla Harrison to, I'm sure PFL were devastated about that. But also, if you're Pacheco, if you're Julia Budd, if you're some of the other people, you want to be fighting Kayla Harrison. You want her in the division. And when she isn't in it, it's kind of, it's a little bit unfair on Pacheco as well, considering she had beaten her last year. Now she has to go back in, look, to win the million, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm sure she's happy enough to win the million and not have to beat Kayla Harrison. But still, if this is another fighter, they'd say they went running, And I'm not saying that Kayla Harrison went running, but she definitely didn't. But at the same time, I think Pacheco should be looked at and looked on as a bit of a gangster for what she did last year and what she did this year as well. So credit to her. This is probably her worst performance in a long time. Close enough fight. Julia Budd came in and she performed well. Again, if you know contest in this, Kapeloza and Sheffield, Rizan Kuniev against Hinan Fahea, but obviously a lot of the women's fights on this, Olena Koleshnik got a great win over Aspen Lada. She was the underdog, obviously, coming in there, as did Amanda Leibrook. Good knockout there. I think I picked her as one of my picks that week, and great year for Marina Mokathena as well. She picked up a win here, as did Evelyn Martinez. Maurice Green beat Nunes in the heavyweight division. Alo Baggio Walsh. Interesting what they did. Just to mention Ali Baggio Walsh, they did it with Nathan Kelly in the PFL Europe as well, giving the amateurs a go here. And a few people criticised it in Ireland, but we always have plenty of begrudgers here. But I think what PFL do with that, like, obviously, he's Ali's grandson, and, for Nate the Great over here in Ireland, he was the young lad that came through at McGregor, and he's turned into a person of interest. And to have amateur showcase fights like that, I think it's pretty cool. For PFL, I like the fact that they're not all about just, this has to be a season fight, this has to be a tournament fight, that has to be a completely meaningful fight. But you know what? An amateur fight can be very meaningful as well, or the first fight of your career, or one of the first few fights of your career, fighting on a big card that pushes you on to become, a very good fighter. It pushes you on to give you experience for you to go to that next level. So, I'm glad the PFL have done that. I wouldn't like too much amateur fights, 1 or 2 a year. If it's a special attraction, someone like this, absolutely fine with me. But I want to give him credit for that, to be honest, because I like that. And Ali Baggio Walsh has been pretty good this year, as was Nate the Great in that fight. A week later, then 3 fights before the 14th of April. The welterweights were in on the top here, and Sadibou C, he just looked so good against Jaral Al-Shalawi. Finished him here, and I think after C won the season the year before, he went to a different level, I think, this year. He started finishing guys more. He started becoming more attacking and then finishing guys more, but looked so good. And I think he's the sort of guy that you look at the PFL format and you think this has not only been perfect for a guy like him, who has had a good few opportunities, eventually won it, improved, and then went on to another level. It's funny that you think maybe that wouldn't happen, right? But it's happened with him. It's happened with Pacheco. It happened with a few more people as well. Now, I think that sometimes the issue is you get to the likes of, say, maybe the Chris Wades or the Bubba Jenkinses or the Nathan Schultz, and maybe lads are in it too much, too far, too many tournaments, and maybe they need to go, maybe they need to go to Bellator or something like that. I think that can happen too, but that can happen, if you're in the UFC for too long, or if you're in Bellator for too long or whatever, and you need just like a fresh coat of paint. But I do think it is something that is happening at an alarming rate, I think, in the PFL, with guys like really, really improving in the tournament, winning it, and then improving again and going forward. Now, the funny one, I suppose, was Brendan Loughnane. We'll talk more about that, but we'll see what happens with him next year. I'm not willing to rule that out happening with him either, but I suppose we will see on that. Look, Magomed Karamov, another one, he started off very well, but he was on this card. He got a very good win. Hausham Mafeo beat Alex Martinez. Well, a guy who maybe I was saying last year was one of those people I was talking about, maybe he doesn't need to be in the tournament anymore. He's been there, done that, but no, he looked really good again this year and beat Martinez. Shane Mitchell lost to Naib Lopez. Bruno Miranda got a win here, as did Nathan Schultz, the aforementioned, over Stevie Ray. Shane Burgos, when he came into PFL, I remember thinking to myself, this guy was a good UFC fighter, not a great UFC fighter. There's guys in PFL who are better than Shane Burgos, and he found that out this year. Over Mercia 100% was anyway in this night. And when the UFC were kind of crying about him going, I was like, I don't know. It was a good signing for PFL, but like, I hope they didn't pay too much for him. No, from their point of view, I hope they did pay too much for him. I take that back. I hope Sean Burgos got them as much money as he possibly can get. But if you're like a soccer fan or something, and your team is signing someone, you're like, well, I don't know if that's the best value. We're paying 40 million for Donny van de Beek or something like that. Well, it looked good, but is it that good? I don't know. But yeah, Burgos hasn't had the greatest year, to be honest. Clay Collard, though, again, another guy who just loves the tournament and is great in it. Goltsov, Miranda, and Umalatov. Miranda is probably the best example of a guy who's improved and improved and improved. And he's a guy who I think, I just hope, obviously welterweight. There's a lot of Bellator welterweights as well. I'd hope a guy like Carlos Miranda won't maybe get pushed out. But I suppose that's a big question for a lot of the fighters. We'll see what happens there. Then there was a bit of a break. They came back in June, and the shock of the year in the PFL, where Jesus Pinedo beat Brendan Loughnane, knocked him out after only 94 seconds with a beautiful knee and beautiful shots. Massive underdog coming in, massive shock. One of the biggest shocks of the year, but what a win. And this shows exactly what PFL is about. You have Brendan Loughnane, who is the guy, big fan favourite in the UK. They're coming back obviously to the UK, and with the PFL Europe and all of that, and I'm sure they have bigger plans for years ahead. And if he was the guy, a 2-time champion, he's going to be big star, massive and all that. But he lost. He went in there and he had a fight, and the better man on the night won. And take nothing away from Loughnane, I'm a massive fan of Brendan Loughnane as a person and as a fighter. But Jesus Pinedo did what sports do. If you're Accrington Stanley and you beat Liverpool, then you beat them. You win 1-0, you win 1-0, and not to say that Pinedo is Accrington Stanley. In fact, we'll see he's very much not later on, but you gotta love it. You win and you advance, and that's exactly what he did in this one. There weren't many other underdog wins, I suppose, here. Kabalayev, Hamlet, Jenkins, Silveira all got the wins over there, I suppose, against inferior opponents. Chris Wade beat Ryuji Kudo pretty quickly in that. Tough year for Kudo. You'd almost fancy it being his last year in the PFL after a great first year. Very fun fighter. I'd love to see him picked up, maybe it's like a one championship or something like that, or maybe even going to Bellator. I think there's some full fights there. Do you know what would be a great fight? Ryoji Kudo versus James Gallagher. That'd be a great fight to make in Bellator. Let's make that happen. Someone needs to tell someone. Come on, Don Davis or that'd be a great fight. Love to see that fight. Anyway, Impa Kasanganay in the tournament now beats Tim Caron. Wonderful win for him there in the second round. Andrew Sanchez, Abigail Montes got a win, as did Alex Pergande in the undercard here. Then we moved on to the 16th of June, the PFL 5 of 2023. Ante Delia ended up getting the unanimous decision over Maurice Green here. Made a little bit maybe of hard work of it, but did end up getting the win. Hina Fahea also won against Matthias Scheffel. You know, the guys you would expect in a Skolsov as well in the heavyweight division, as did Nunes and Heiderman over Brady. You know, Brady's one of those guys, I think maybe in a few years, but not quite ready for it yet. Then we had the women's heavyweights as well, as I like to call them, but featherweights. Pacheco got a very easy win against Leibrook. You know, you need that at that time of the year, don't you? You know, she'd one tough fight, put that in the bag, put that in the books, goes in and beats Leibrock in 45 seconds, and then she's going on to what makes her the money, let's say. Ali Walsh was back here, got another win. Spinlad beat Karina Sobek. Badly needed win in her career there. Again, Makathena got a win. Looked good, beating Evelyn Martez and Julia Budd as well. Beat Bijindrova, as did Olenek. What a great win for a Kaleshnik even. Elena Kaleshnik, really good win. Really good year for her as well. June 23rd then, the 6th PFL card of the year. Aubin Mercier beats Anthony Romero here. A pretty good matchup for Aubin Mercier. Sometimes I wonder how they come across these matchups and how they make these matchups. Maybe it's to do with, you know, the mathematics of it all and that. But I'd like to know that. Maybe someone has explained it before. If anyone knows, let me know. But yeah, a good win for Aubin Mercier, but a pretty easy matchup there. CB Mitchell as well. I thought that was... he made a little bit of tough work of that, but he got through it. Burgos, you know, a little bit of nice matchmaking as well against Nishikawa, got back. We had Magomed Karamov beating David Zavada. Umalatov won here, Clay Collard won, Carlos Leal Miranda, and then we had a very controversial fight, obviously, between Nathan Schultz and Hausch Maffeo, the teammates, and they were both thrown out of it after this, and Shane Burgos got through a decision that I didn't agree with, and I think most people did not agree with, but that's what happened, and Shane Burgos went through. I don't like when kind of promotions meddle with things like that. Like, why make this fight if you think that's a possibility, or if it could be a possibility? There's plenty of other lads to fight, but I think that is a learning experience for PFL. I don't think they'll be making that mistake again somehow. But Bruno Miranda, Rinfro also got wins in this one. We move on to the 7th card of the year on August 4th. And this is when the big boys, I suppose, started fighting here. As we come towards the end of the year, obviously Pinedo beat Bubba Jenkins to get to the finale. A very good win for him there in the second round, and now it's becoming, you know, star stuff. It's becoming the stuff of dreams here for Pinedo, and he gets to the final. Silveira as well, after coming in short notice last year, getting to the final last year. He's back in the final again this year. Or did he get to the final last year? Or did he get close to it? I think he got to the final, if memory serves me correct. Braga won, beat Chris Wade, and we'll see that rematch we'll talk about in a second. And what a win for Impa Kasanganay. You know, a guy who I've underrated a little bit. I know people in the comment section get on to me about underrating Impa Kasanganay, but I will never do that anymore. Brilliant win for him there against Martin Hamlet, who I rate very, very highly. There was some other fights on this card as well, but none of the tournament fights on that. But there was at August 18th in the 8th card of the year, Hina Fahea beat Maurice Green. You know, big guy against big guy. Took him out in a round, big knockout, big punches in there. You could say the same 14 seconds for Larissa Pacheco. Took out Koleshnik, who was having a great year, but, you know, when you meet Pacheco, that year quickly turns badly. Goltsov got into the final as well here. Was there something happened? Was there a bit of like flu or something? I remember some of the fights had to be moved around. Goltsov had to move to the next week, didn't he? So yeah, Makathena didn't won as well. Nathan Kelly was on the undercard here. He went on to headline PFL Dublin and got a great win there as well. So yeah, that was good stuff there out of that card. And then we got to the championship, the finale, and it was It was a card that, do you know what? If I could give one piece of advice to the PFL, it would be to make the finale a weekend. Let's make, how many title fights are in this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Let's make them 6 next year, right? Let's have 6 tournaments. Let's a bantamweight tournament. Let's bring in the Bellator guys. Let's go all out, and let's on a Friday night we have 3 title fights with a great undercard. Saturday night we've 3 title fights with a great undercard. This is the PFL weekend extravaganza. There's a massive problem when you have 5 title fights and 5 rounds. They can go awful long. Now, these didn't, right? There was a few of them. There was 3 of them, and then a few 3 rounds. And the second round, there was no early finish on this. And that is an issue because you turn great fights and potential like showcase fights for your organization into like a long night for the people watching at home. And there was a little bit of that here, to be honest. So I've talked to people. I've mentioned it to people in PFL before, and they've like said to me, "Yeah, that's not a bad idea." You know, that's a good. And I honestly, I don't think it's an idea that I came up with necessarily. I think they've probably been thinking about that themselves. But I would love them to do that. Regardless, I think the PFL probably got the champions they wanted in the end out of this year. It was a very tumultuous year, obviously, with, you know, and in the end anyway, maybe they would have wanted Loughnane, maybe they would have wanted Wilkinson and Capoloza and a few more, but with what they had left, I think the fact that Aubin Mercier won, he retired, we'll see what happens. You know, Clay Collard, I think Clay would have been a great winner as well, but I think Sheehan Fahea winning is a real blessing for them. This guy is a 6'8". Is it 6'8" or bigger? He's a big monster anyway. A big monster of man, 6'8". This is a guy who can fight Francis Ngannou. He mightn't beat him, but by God, he could test him. He could hit him. A very good fighter, even more so maybe even than Goltsov, who might have a better chance of beating Francis because of his wrestling. But I haven't heard that from PFL. I need PFL to tell me that. I've been telling people that because I believe that. But I you know, this heavyweight division for PFL with Francis now on the outskirts, they need to start promoting this more. They need to start telling people how good these lads are. Because you know what? Fahea is a good fighter. Goltsov is a good fighter. Capoloza is a good fighter. There are a few good fighters in there. There's no doubt about that at all. But people just don't know who they are. You know? And then, you know, you've Dan Davis coming on and he kind of saying, there's no one of no, what was it? There's no intriguing fight. I'm intrigued by a fight. I'm an MMA fan. I'm intrigued by an MMA fight over a boxing match any day. You know, come on. You're an MMA promoter here. Give the people what they want. You have what people would want. Give us that. Come on. Or talk about giving it to us anyway. Anyway, great win for Fahea. After a tough enough first round, he came back and he won 26 seconds into the second round. Pacheco, you know, Macathena, she has improved. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Macathena won a tournament next year. Let's say if Pacheco wasn't in it, Harrison wasn't in it. I think Macathena is the next best person in that division. She's improved so much over the last few years. Very good performance from her there. But Pacheco wins her second million. Brilliant. You just love. Do you know my favorite thing about PFL finales? You see people winning £1 million. $1 million. It's beautiful. We always talk about, you know, ad nauseum we talk about the pay being bad. But when the pay is good, we don't talk about it enough. And this is beautiful. Beautiful. I love seeing it. And for Pacheco to pick up $2 million in 2 years, brilliant. Megan Karamov beat C then. Emphatic. Got the finish in the third round. And what about Ngannou? I said I'd name my fighter of the year for PFL and for everyone else. Actually, I'd almost forgot a title fight here because it's buried, and there's 2 people who it's a real toss-up for me, and it's Impica Sanganai and Jesus Pinedo. I'm so torn, right? Because this is the reason I'm torn. Pinedo did lose a fight, right? Now, he came back and he beat him. And Kasang and I won like 12 fights this year or whatever it was. But I do feel like the level that Pinedo beat was higher. I'm just so torn. Can I name a giant? Can I name a giant fighter of the year? Do you know what? Because of the slight disrespect I showed Kasang and I not picking him a couple of times, and the people giving out to me in the comment section correctly, I'm gonna give my Sheehan Show 2023 PFL fighter of the year to Impica Sanganai. He is the fighter of the year. Well deserved. Brilliant win against Joshua Silveira. Cut a brilliant promo. Was over in Ireland a couple of weeks after. You know, was very good to the fans and everything like that as well. Brilliant fighter, brilliant representative of MMA. And do you know what I love as well? When Daniel Cormier won the heavyweight championship, I loved it. As much as maybe I'm not Daniel Cormier's biggest fan, but I loved it because he got out of the shadow of John Jones. You know, just even if it was only for a month or a while, he did it. And Kasang, how would you remember him, Kasanga, if he didn't win this? How would you remember him? We all know, I think, he was on the wrong side of the greatest knockout in UFC history. I don't think there's any debate about that. I think it was the greatest knockout in UFC history, and he was the one who got knocked out. And that's how he would have been remembered. But now, he's a champion in PFL, won the light heavyweight division, came in when he wasn't even supposed to be in the tournament, won his way in, got in, beat everyone, looked brilliant doing it, and takes home the $1 million. I love it. What a story. What a brilliant year for Kasanga. Fantastic. And then for Pinedo as well. Lost his first fight to Braga, beats Brendan Loughnane, wins in the semi-final, comes back and beats Braga, knocks him out in the third round. Well, what a story for Jesus Pinedo. Like a guy, and I love that as well, because even if Braga had won, I think it would have been the same. A guy like maybe you wouldn't have expected to be a very, very a championship level fighter, or to reach that goal. They do it and they can reach it, and that's what happens in PFL, and I love that. It's one of my favorite things about PFL, you know. So fantastic for all those champions to get there. Also on this card, Kayla Harrison got back to win aways, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more of her as well. But and there was a big win for Derek Brunson over Ray Cooper, and I'm sure we'll be seeing him in a tournament next year. So that was the year for the PFL, and you know, a tough year, but a year that ended very well, I think. And as I said, I like to end it on looking forward. There's a lot to look forward to for PFL. You now have Bellator fighters in PFL. Who of the Bellator fighters are going to be in the season brackets for next year? How is it going to work out? Is there going to be more fighters? Is there going to be more tournament season tournament brackets? Is there going to be more divisions? Who's going to be going back and forth between PFL and Bellator? Is PFL Europe going to come back to Ireland? Is a big question I'd want to ask him. PFL Europe was an unmitigated success for me. Please check out the review I did on that. We also have PFL Middle East and Africa, I believe, isn't it, coming up this year? The Challenger Series also, I didn't mention that, but the Challenger Series, I watch a couple of the Challenger Series tough, you know, when it's on a Tuesday or whatever it is, as an Irish man, and it's on at like 3 o'clock in the morning, so I won't lie and tell you I've watched all of them, but I watched a bit. My guy Nathan Kelly was on one of them, and I do like them quick 4 fights out the door. I love that. You know, it's very, very good, but honestly, I like a lot of what PFL are doing. I'm very interested to see how it goes. You would hope that they can keep bringing money in and get to a place where they can make money and make a lot of money and put up a real battle against the UFC. And, you know, they talk about co-leader. That would be great. It'd be great for him, mate. And you know what? The product that they offer has given me way more joy than the UFC in the last year. Way more. Honestly. And I'd encourage anyone, if you're watching this and you wanted them, maybe, what happened in the PFL this year? Check it out next year. Give it a try, because it's rewarding. It really is. And it'll even be more rewarding next year, because you won't have fucking 15 lads failing drug tests. I don't think that's going to happen again anyway. So, yeah, a good year for the PFL. A great year for the PFL outside of the cage. A bad year at times inside the cage that ended in a good year. The fights were always good. It's just a little bit disappointing that we didn't get all the big fights we wanted. But at the end, we did a finale that saw some sad, and sad is not the word, emotional moments, sad moments, I suppose, with Oba Mercier retiring, if he does retire, and some, like, I'll say it again, seeing people wave that 1 million around, even the 100,000 in the PFL Europe that I saw him, it's beautiful, it's lovely, and I'm glad the PFL give us something like that. And as I said, in the future, we have Francis Ngannou. Take Jake Paul or leave him, you know, whatever, but Francis Ngannou next year. Oh, I can't wait for it. I absolutely cannot wait for it. All right, everyone. That is it for me. That is my season review. Congratulations, Ipika Sanganai, your fighter of the year for the Sheehan Show in PFL. And that is it for the Sheehan Show for today. Thank you very much. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.